Okay, so good morning. Today's day 100 of Yevamot. It's this is like, we made some real progress. It's a remarkable, when you do a little bit every day, you really make progress. And today's day 100, and so we're on Daf Kuf Aleph, and that's really exciting. So, okay, so let's talk about what we're in the middle of. We've been discussing a child who's uncertain about which of two men is his father. And just to give a little context to that, the situation is as follows: the wife was married to two men, but did not wait 3 months between the marriages, and so as a result, the child who's born 7 months after husband number two, we're not sure whether he's the 7-month child for husband number two or a 9-month child for husband number one. That's a real problem. We just don't know which it is. And so as a result, we're unsure about this child's father. So we mentioned in our Mishnah that if the son hit, struck, hit, or cursed either of the men, he would not be liable because the person he hit might not be his father. There's a special prohibition about cursing or hitting one's parent. And so if one did that and we weren't sure, we couldn't necessarily punish them. But what happens if he hits both of them? That's the question that the Gemara is now going to take on. So Hayu Shnei Kohen, we're at the very, very top of Daf Kuf Aleph Amud Aleph, 101a, and Hayu Shneim Kohanim. So they were both. This is the quote from our Mishnah. They were both Kohanim. So, and one of the subsets of that was what happens if he hits them both. Well, Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a brisa, Hikazeh v'chazar v'hikazeh. If you hit one and then you go back and you hit the other. If you cursed one and then you went and cursed the other one, or you cursed both of them at the same time, or you hit both of them at the same time. So again, we've now covered when you do one and then the other, or when you do them at the same time. Rabbi Chayev, then the Tanakama says that you are obligated, that you are liable to the death penalty, which is the penalty for hitting or cursing one's parent, and so as a result, that you're subject to the penalty. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Bivas Achas Chayev, B'Zachar Zeh Pater. That when it comes to doing it, if you do them both at the same time, then you will be liable. But if you do it one after the other, well, then you are going to be exempt. You are not liable because, and now we're going to go to Rashi to help us, because Rashi says that when you do one after the other, now let's talk about how, let's just put a little reminder in here for how the Beit Din imposes a death penalty. A requirement of imposition of the death penalty is a warning. No one gets the death penalty without being warned. And so Rabbi Yehuda says that if this child, who's not sure whether husband number one or husband number two is his father, hits husband number one and then hits husband number two, well, what happened in connection with the warnings? Well, each action that he took needed a separate warning. So he goes and he's about to hit number one, and the witnesses come and say, listen, if you hit your dad, you're going to be liable. And he's like, well, this might not be my dad. And so the kind of warning that exists is not a certain warning, it's a Shema warning. If this is your dad, you will be liable. So, and then the second warning, when he goes and hits the second guy, it's also an uncertain warning. You can't warn for a definitive violation of the Torah, because each of the each of the potential fathers might not be his father. And so as a result, Rashi explains that is why Rabbi Yehuda says if you do it one after the other, well, then that's why you're not liable, because you never got a full-fledged warning. On the other hand, according to the first opinion, even an uncertain warning where somebody is told that if this is your father, you're going to be liable for the death penalty. Even that kind of warning is sufficient if in the end the person does the violation. And so as a result, according to the first opinion, if you hit one and then hit the other and you got warned for both of them, well, then those warnings can combine and you're going to get the death penalty. Whereas the Rebbe Yehuda says, no, only if you do it at the same time. If you hit both of them at the same time, then you can get a warning, because then the warning is a definitive warning. If you hit both these men with this big punch that you're about to throw, well, you're going to definitely hit the man who's your father, and therefore you'll definitely be liable, and you're going to end up with the death penalty. And so as a result, in that situation, Rabbi Yehuda would even agree with the Tanna Kama that in that situation, you do get the death penalty. Okay, so the Hatanya. Now we're going to ask a brief question. So we've addressed the issue of what happens if you hit both of them, and we've determined that it's a machlokas between the Tanna Kama and Rabbi Yehuda. But what about the following? The Hatanya. One second, we have another brisa where it says Rabbi Yehuda Omer patur b'vasachas, that even if you hit them both at the same time, you're patur, you're exempt. So what's the story there? So the answer is, the Gemara says, Trei Tanai Aliba de Rabbi Yehuda. There are actually two Tanaim according to Rabbi Yehuda. Well, my time a demand de Potter. Well, one second. Why would you say that even if you hit both of them at the same time, that he should be exempt? That doesn't seem like a real thing that should be exempt. That seems like everybody should agree that should be chayiv, because you can warn the person with a definitive warning that you're about to violate the Torah prohibition. Well, Amar Rabbi Chanina, Nemar bracha lamata, v'nemar bracha lamala. That in connection with, now here we're using the word bracha, I'd say almost ironically, because it really means to curse as opposed to bless. So it says in connection with cursing with respect to parents, it also references cursing with respect to, God forbid, God. And so as a result, mala she'ein ba shutafut, when it comes to God, there is no partnership, meaning there is no question about who God is. And so as a result, if you curse God, you're going to be liable. But if you curse anything else, you're not. But aflamata she'ein bo shutafut. So when we say that there's got to be no partnership, it means that you can't have an uncertainty about who the parent is. So v'itkish haka l'klala. And similarly, we say that there's a connection between hitting and cursing. And so as a result, just as with cursing, one is not liable if you're cursing somebody who is an uncertain parent. So too with respect to hitting, if you hit somebody who's an uncertain parent. And so as a result, this child who's not sure whether his father is husband number one or husband number two, even if he hits both of the men at the same time, we are not going to punish him, because it is a different kind of thing than when you hit a certain parent. And so as a result, and this is again all based on the connection between cursing the parents and cursing God, where God doesn't have any partners. And so too, it's only when you curse a parent who doesn't have a partner, meaning that there's no uncertainty associated with that parentage. Okay, so that is piece number one. Now we quote the next little bit of the Mishnah, where we said the Ola b'mishmaro, that the man, that if the both husbands were Kohanim, the son is able to go up and serve in either of the mishmarot of his potential fathers. So v'chima achar de'eno cholik lama ola. Well, one second. We also said that he doesn't get a portion from that service, meaning he doesn't get any share in the temple service of the korbanot. Well, then why would he go up? Well, 1 second. Ha'amar be'ina de mitzvah. Well, that's easy. It's because he says, I want to do a mitzvah. So now on some level, we're asking a question back on what kind of question is that? Of course, he wants to go up because he wants to do a mitzvah. So Ella lo katani. Well, 1 second. Let's take a look at the language of our Mishnah. It did not say Allah as in if he went up, meaning that he gets to serve at his own option. Ella ola bal karcho. Rather, it seems that the Mishnah says he's forced to go up. He has to serve. Well, why should he be forced to serve? So the Gemara answers, Amar Rav Acha bar Chanina, Amar Abaye, Amar Rabbi Asi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. All those people said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, Mishum Pegam Mishpacha, that we're concerned about a showing a deficiency in the family. And how would his failure to go up show a deficiency in the family? Because Rashi explains, people are going to think that he's a halal, meaning that his father married somebody who he's not allowed to marry, or his father himself was a halal. And as a result, that's why he's not serving, meaning they're going to think that he was there was some biblical violation, not just an uncertainty about parentage. And so as a result, that's why we have to make sure that he serves, because we want to make sure that people don't think that that there's a problem with his parentage. And obviously there is a problem with his parentage, and that is there's an uncertainty. But there was no Torah violation as a result that caused that uncertainty. It just happens to be that there's an uncertainty. And so as a result, that's why we're going to force him to serve. So, okay, so now we go to the last piece of the Mishnah, and with that, we'll finish the 11th chapter of Yevamot. So the Mishnah said, Im hayu shneim b'mishmar echad, that if they were both part of the same mishmar, so then not only can the son serve, but he can also even receive a portion. Well, 1 second. So ma'ishna shnei mishmaros lo. What's the reason that if he served, if his two potential fathers were in different mishmarot, that he doesn't get a portion? Because each of the mishmarot would say the azal laha mishmara umadchile, that if he goes up to first mishmar number 1 of husband number 1, they would push him away and say, maybe you're really the child of husband number 2. And if you go to the mishmar of husband number 2, they'll push him away and say, yeah, maybe you were the child of husband number 1, and so you shouldn't be with us. So if that's true, mishmar echad nami, even within the same mishmar, there should be a way for the people of the mishmar to avoid having to pay him off, because azul lahai beisav, because each mishmar is divided into 6 batei av. So let's go through the system just to remind ourselves exactly how it works. There were 24 mishmarot. So every week, basically, imagine a year of 48 weeks, and because I guess the Jewish calendar is roughly 50 weeks, but then there are 2 1-week holidays, so that brings us down to 48 weeks. And so in the 48 weeks, we divide all the Kohanim by 24. And so every Kohen serves 2 weeks a year. Now, in the week that they serve, they further divide each mishmar up into what are known as a Beis Av. And they have 6 Beit Avot. And each of those Beit Avot, they would serve 1 day, and then everybody would come and serve on Shabbat. And so as a result, if in fact he goes on Monday to serve, well, then they can push him away and say, Monday isn't your day, maybe it's Tuesday. So also what'll happen, so even with mishmar, even with 1 mishmar, azul lahai beisav umad chilei, and va'azul lahai beisav umad chilei, if using the language that was added by the Bach. So wherever he goes, he's going to get pushed away. So Amar of Papa, Hachikamer. No, so we got to clarify our Mishnah. Yes, our Mishnah, as we read it, only refers to one mishmar, but we can also say that really it means that they're part of the same Beit Av as well. So let's take a look. So Hachikamer, this is what our Mishnah says. Im hayu shneim mishmar echad uveit av echad. No chelik echad. That if they're both from the same mishmar and from the same Beit Av, that is when they would be able to take. He would be able to get his portion. But otherwise, as suggested by our question, we would have a problem, and he would not get anything. So Hadron Allah nosin al ha'anusa, Hadron Allah nosin al alusa, no Hadron Allah nosin al ha'anusa. So now we're ready to begin the 12th chapter of Yevamot, and the 12th chapter deals with the procedures of chalitza. So we're going to go through some of the key elements of chalitza. So mitzvahs chalitza b'shlosh dayanim. We have to do chalitza in front of 3 judges, but the afilu shlashtan had yotot. But they don't have to be professional judges. They could be regular people. So all the way we have, for example, when we do hataras nedarim on Erev Rosh Hashanah or Erev Yom Kippur, so that hataras nedarim is, we don't have 3 professional judges. We have 3 regular layperson judges, and that constitutes our Beit Din. And so that's sufficient. So that's the first point. Second point, chilsa b'minal. So we're going to talk about how let's just assume that we know for the moment that the process of yibum involves the removing of a shoe. The woman removes the shoe, the Yevamot removes the shoe from the Yavam, from his right foot, and then spits in his face, and that constitutes the chalitza process. So now we're going to talk about the nature of that shoe. So chatzol b'minal. If you have, Rashi explains that minal is a soft leather shoe. So it's like a slipper, like one of our modern day slippers, where it's nice and soft, and you can, and it's easy to, it's a slip-on kind of shoe. So chalitza sak shera, that is still a kosher chalitza. And the reason that we might think that it's not kosher is because it's soft, it's sticking to the foot, even though there is no top sole to it. So as a result, and that's a concern because we want to make sure that it's a real shoe. However, on pila, which essentially Rashi says is some kind of cloth-based foot covering, and here the translation is a sock. So that is going to be chalitza sapsula. That is not a valid chalitza. So you need a leather-based shoe. The sandal, when you talk about a sandal, is the hard leather. Sheyesh lo akev kasher. As long as it's got a sole, it's going to be okay. Meaning you have to have something that you're stepping on. It can't just cover the top of the foot. The she'ein lo akev pasul. But if it doesn't have something underneath the heel of your foot, well, then it's going to be invalid. Min ha'arkuba lumata chalitza kshera. If the shoe comes from the knee and below, so then that's considered a sufficient shoe. Meaning, what happens if, God forbid, a person is an amputee? What's the status? Is it still considered a shoe if it's something at the bottom of his leg? Well, if the leg is longer than the knee, well, then that's going to be a valid chalitza. But min ha'arkuva ulamala chalitza psula. But Rashi explains if the foot is cut off from the knee and above, well, then whatever covers it at the bottom, that is not considered a shoe. And so as a result, that would not be a valid chalitza to remove that. So chalza besad dol she'ein shelo. Now what happens if the guy doesn't have any shoes, and now we give him a shoe, or besad dol shel eitz, or we give him a wooden foot shoe, the shel smol biyamin, or he uses his left shoe on his right foot. Well, in all of those cases, even though the shoe might not fit perfectly, we're going to say chalitza Shera. It is a valid chalitza. So it doesn't actually have to be leather. Even wood seems to be sufficient. Okay, so, and we're going to talk about later in the Gemara, in over the weekend, I think we'll talk about what kind of wooden shoe we're talking about. So chatzal, the gadol shehu yachol lahalok bo, if the shoe is simply too big but he can still walk in it, well then, bekatan shehu chofa es rov raglo, or it's too small, but at least it covers most of his foot. Again, chalitzasa shera. In all these cases, it is still a valid chalitza. So we've now gone through our Mishnah. So now the Gemara begins by considering the judges. And let's take a look and see what it says about it. Well, given the fact that we can allow for 3 regular people to serve as the judges, why do we even mention judges? What's the implication of referencing judges? So mashmalan to be'inan shlosha sheyodin lahakros, because the 3 can't be totally uneducated so that they don't know how to read, because they need to be able to tell the Yavam and Yevamot the psukim that they're going to be reading. So ba'in dayanim. So as a result, ke'ein dayanim. So as a result, we need them to be similar to judges in that judges, of course, are educated. And so as a result, we need the 3 to be sufficiently educated so that they can convey to the participants what they're supposed to do. So tanina laha the tanu rabbanan. And we in fact have a Mishnah that the rabbis, in fact, what we learned in our Mishnah is in fact taught in a brisa, where it says mitzvah chalitza b'shlosha. It's important to do the mitzvah of chalitza in front of 3. Sheyodin lahakros ke'ein dayanim, who are able to tell the people what to say, similar to judges. Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'chamisha, and Rabbi Yehuda says that you don't just need 3 judges, you need 5 judges. Okay, so now we're going to go on an aside to understand why it is that we need 5 judges, and when we talk and why we need 3 judges. So we're going to understand both of these opinions, and we're also going to then go through because Rabbi Yehuda is going to use certain additional words to require additional judges. The rabbis are going to have to say what they do with those words. And then, of course, when we figure out what the rabbis do with those words, we're going to have to figure out how Rabbi Yehuda learns the lesson that the rabbis learn. So we're going to go through that for the next little bit. And then, of course, it continues, because then Rabbi Yehuda is going to use other words. And then what are the rabbis going to use for those words for? And then the rabbis are going to teach something with those words. And so how is Rabbi Yehuda going to learn that lesson? And we continue on and on like that for a little bit. So let's take a look and we'll see it inside. So my time at the Tanna Kama, what's the reasoning of the Tanna Kama who says that we only need 3 judges? The Tanya, because the pasuk in Dvarim Perikav Hey pasuk Zayin says that it says the word Zikenim. So here's the full pasuk. V'im lo yachpo tzaish, if the man doesn't want, lakachas es yevimto, to take the Yevamot as his wife, but also Yevimto ashara, so he'll bring her to the gate, Ela Zikenim, to the elders, va'amra me'en Yevami la'akim la'achiv shem b'Yisrael lo aba yavmi. I don't want to fulfill the name of my brother, and so as a result, I don't want to do yibum. And so as a result, so we saw the word zikenim. Zikenim is plural, shnayim. That suggests that you need at least 2. The ain based in shakol, and you can't have an even numbered of judges. So mosivin alein odechad. So you got to add 1. Harei kan shlosha. So that's how we end up with 3 judges in this case. Rabbi Yehuda. What about Rabbi Yehuda? Well, not only did that pasuk say zikenim, but then the next pasuk says the karulo ziknei iro the dibru elav ba'amad V'amar lo chapatzi lekachta. It says, and then they called to him, the elders call of the city, of his city, and they spoke to him, and he stood up and he said, I don't want to take her. So so again, the fact that we have ziknei shnayim, so the reference to ziknei in the next pasuk, that refers to two, because ziknei is plural, and zikenim shnayim, and then the first zikenim that we referenced, that's also plural. So ve'ain based in shakel, so that's a total of 4, and you can't have an even number. So mosif and alein od echad, so we have an additional one that totals 5. Harei kan chamisha, the Tanakama. So again, what about the Tanakama? So now we have Hi Ziknei my Avidle. What does he do with that word Ziknei in the second pasuk in Parakaf Hey pasuk Chet of Dvarim? So he uses that to tell us that even 3 regular people are sufficient. You don't need formal judges. So Rebbe Yehuda had Jotov Minole. How does he know that you're allowed to use regular lay people? So Nafgalei Mim Le'ene. He learns it from the eyes, because it says in the pasuk that follows in pasuk Tet. So it says v'nikshayev toe lav le'enei hazikenim, right? It says that you bring him to the eyes of the elders. So the amarmar le'enei prat l'sumim, because the point is that the fact that they have to see him says that you exclude blind people. And since we need to refer to specifically exclude blind people, shma mina dafilu hedjot, so that you can even use regular people, the Isak Adaitik Sanhedrin being, because if in fact you would need to have regular court judges that are sufficient to be part of a Sanhedrin, you wouldn't need to specifically exclude a blind man. Why? Because Meditani Rav Yosef Nafka, Rav Yosef himself, who was blind, what did he teach? The Tiny Rav Yosef, the Kashem Shabastin Menukim B'Tzedek, just as a Bastin needs to be clean in terms of their righteousness, that they are very, they have a great deal of integrity. Kach Bastin Menukim Mikol Mum. They have to be clean. They have to be avoid any kind of physical blemish. Shene'amar kulach yafa rayasi umum ein bach. So this pasuk from Shir Hashirim can be understood to refer to judges, that they are entirely beautiful without any blemish. So the idach. Well, 1 second. Now that the Tanakama, now that Rabbi Yehuda learned from Le'enei, the fact that you could use a regular person, why doesn't the Tanakama use from Le'enei? So, and what does he do with it? What does the Tanakama use Le'enei for? So look at the Rava Huda Asa, that he uses it for Rava, what Rava taught, the Amar Rava, that when the woman spits towards the Yavam, she needs to, the spittle needs to be visible. And she's going to spit. So they have to be able to physically see the spittle that comes out of her mouth. Well, 1 second, doesn't Rabbi Yehuda also need Le'enei to teach us that? Yes, you're absolutely right. So as a result, we're going to have to figure out where else Rabbi Yehuda knows that they are lay people is permitted. So ve'ela hedjotot minole. So in that case, how does he know that lay people are okay? Nafka me b'Yisrael, because during the psukim, one of the psukim said, let me see if I could find it, said b'Yisrael, that it has to be in Israel. So let's see, where is that pasuk? Hold on just a second. This is pasuk Zion. So again, v'im lo yachpot ha'ish lekachas es yivimto va'alsa yivimto ha'shara el hazakim v'amrim me'en yivmei lahakim la'achiv shem b'Yisrael. So the fact that it references in Israel, Yisrael kol dehu, person of Israel. So even a non-judge is okay to serve as judge. V'idach ha-Yisrael my avidlei. So what does the Tanakama do with the word Yisrael? So like Tani Rav Yishmuel Bar Yehuda. So he uses it like Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, who said the following: Be Yisrael. When it says Be Yisrael, Beveistin shel Yisrael, below Beveistin shel Gerim. It means that the judges have to be born Jewish. They cannot be converts. So Ve'idach Yisrael Achrin Uksiv. So and how does Rabbi Yehuda derive this world? The fact that the judges need to be Jews and who are born Jewish and not somebody who converted, because it says Be Yisrael a second time. So in verse number 10 of this, it says V'nikra Shmo B'Yisrael Beit Chalutz Hanal. So that second reference to Be Yisrael, that tells us that it has to be Jewish and not converts. So 1 second, what about the Edach? What about the Tanakama? What does he do with the second Be Yisrael? Look at the Tanya. We have a brisa that tells us why he needs the second Be Yisrael. Rabbi Yehuda, Pamachas Hayinu Yoshim Lifnei Rabbi Tarfon, Uva Yevamalach Lots, Va'amar Lanu, Anu Kulchem Chalutz Hanal. So when Rabbi Yehuda said that once we were sitting in front of Rabbi Tarfon, and a Yevamot came to do chalitza in front of us, and Rabbi Tarfon said to us that all of us should say chalutz hanal, the one whose shoe was removed, because the verse says that his name shall be proclaimed in Israel, meaning that when the pasuk says v'nikra shemo b'Yisrael beit chalutz hanal, so it's telling us that when John Doe does chalitza, all the judges and all the people who are present need to point to the guy effectively and say chalutz hanal. This is the guy whose shoe was removed. So the idach. Well, 1 second. What about Rabbi Yehuda? How does he learn the fact that everybody needs to proclaim the fact that the guy is the person who did chalitza? So the nikra nafka. So he learns it from the fact that pasuk begins v'nikra shmo b'Yisrael, that we all call out his name in Israel. And so the fact that it says, that his name shall be called out, in past, it indicates that everybody who calls out. And so as a result, we've now gone through the entire lesson. Now it's interesting because we don't ask, well, what did the Tanakama do with the Nikra? But in any event, that's where we're stopping. And so now we ask on both the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda, and we say the following: there are other words in these verses that are plural. Elamiata, the karu shnayim. The fact that it says karu, that's a plural word. It didn't, and so as a result, the fact that that also add an additional 2 judges? The dibru shnayim, and it says that they shall speak in plural. That's another 2. Hachinami Rabbi Yehuda hari kantisha. Shouldn't we say that Rabbi Yehuda requires 9 judges, meaning add these 4 more judges, and l'Rabbanan hare kan shiva, and have the rabbis say that there need to be 7 judges? But we don't. So ahumi boile lekatanya. We don't, because in fact we need those words for other purposes. The karulo. What do we learn from the fact that they shall call him? The lo shlucham. They have to call him, meaning the court has to go directly to bring the yavam to do chalitza, and they can't send a messenger. The dibru elav, and they have to speak to him. Milamid shemasian lo etzaho geneslo. So they have to give him good advice. This is a very important thing. She'im hayalo shahayahu yelad zikina, because if he's a young boy and she's an old woman, who's a kain he yalda, or she's he is old and she is young, and he wants to perform yibum. Omrlo, we got to tell him, Malacha etzel yalda, Malacha etzel zikena. What does it make sense for you to marry this woman who's so much younger than you or so much older than you? Kalech etzel shikamoscha. You need to go after somebody who is about your age. Al tachnis kitata latoch beischa. Don't bring arguments into your house. And so as a result, that is what we learn from those words. And so again, we have this machlokas between 5 judges and 3 judges, and that's the story. And we've now determined the source for all these different lessons that we've learned along the way. And so now the Gemara teaches some additional, now the Gemara asks a question and says, and gives us the halacha, and says, and so let's take a look and see. So Amar Rava Amar Rav Nachman. So Rava says in the name of Rav Nachman, halacha chalitza b'shlosha. However, stamlan tana kavase. In our Mishnah, which did not reference this machlokas with Rabbi Yehuda, there was just one opinion, and it was anonymous, and it was that you require 3 judges. So we are going to say that the halacha is you require 3 judges. So Amar le Rava le Rav Nachman. Rava then asked Rav Nachman. So Rava reported Rav Nachman's ruling, and now he's telling us about this question that he asked Rav Nachman. Ihachi meyonami. Why don't we require 3 judges with respect to miyun? Now, as a reminder, miyun is the rejection of a husband by a minor who is married off by her brothers and mother. So in the Torah, the father is allowed to marry off a minor. The rabbis allowed, even if the father dies, allowed the mother and brothers to marry her off. But because it's only a rabbinic marriage, the daughter, until she becomes an adult, has the right to refuse the marriage. That's the miyun. And if she refuses the marriage, it's as if it was totally annulled and never happened. So ditnan hameyon chalitza b'shlosha. So too, we have a Mishnah that says that miyun and chalitza are done in front of 3 judges. Now, if you want to say that that is correct, miyun does require a panel of 3 judges, because in fact we learned it in a Mishnah in Sanhedrin at the beginning of Sanhedrin. But Tanya, 1 second, we also learned miyun. Beit Shammai Omer based in Mumchin. Beit Shammai says that for miyun you need a court of regular judges. Who Beit Hillel Omer beit in Shelo based in Shelo based in. It could be either a regular ordained judges, or it could be regular people, not formal judges. So elu ve'elu modem shetzarach shlosha. But both of them agree that you require 3. However, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yossi machshir b'shnayim. However, Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Yossi, they both ruled that even 2 judges is sufficient. The Amar Rabbi Yosef Bar Manyume, Amar of Nachman, halakha ka'osa hazug, that the halakha is like that pair, namely like Rabbi Yossi, the son of Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Yossi, that in fact the halakha is that you only require 2 judges. So how could you say that in fact a chalitza requires 3 judges? It seems like miyun, which is tied together with it, it requires 2 judges. So are you sure that the halacha is that we need 3 judges? So hasam chad stama, hacha trei stama. So here, when it came to our story of chalitza, we've got 2 anonymous mishnayot that tell us that chalitza has to be done with 3. However, when it comes to miyun, we only have 1 mishnah, namely the mishnah in Sanhedrin. But then the Gemara says, 1 second, hasam nami trei stamim yinu. Even with respect to miyun, there are 2 mishnayos that refer to 3 judges. Ditnan, because we have another mishnah that we had earlier in this Masechet, that mi ana o shechalza b'fanav yisa'ena mimnei shehu based in. That if she performed miyun or chalitza before a panel that included a certain rabbi, a certain one of the judges, he's allowed to marry her because his work was done in a court. And so as a result, we'll allow, even though maybe he has an incentive to support her because he wants to marry her, we're going to allow it because the other judges are present. And so as a result, we're going to allow it. Well, 1 second, doesn't that imply that miyun has to be done in front of 3? So we now have 2 anonymous sources that say miyun is in front of 3. Ella hasam tre stame. No, the point is that there by miyun we have 2 anonymous, but hacha tlasa stame. Here we have 3 anonymous mishnayos that it has to be in front of 3. Michti hastama bahastama. But 1 second, at the end of the day, we have one. Who cares how many stam mishnahs we have? They both have a stam mishnah, and we usually say that the halacha is like a stam mishnah. Mali chad stam, mali tre stam, mali tlasa. What do I care whether it's 1, 2, or 3 anonymous mishnayos? So, new answer to our question. Ella Amar of Nachman bar Yitzchak Hoel ustam b'makom machlokas. Now, the question is whether we have a stam with a dispute, which is what we Tanan smicha zekanim ve'egla arufa b'shlosha divri Rabbi Yossi Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'chamisha. That when it comes to hachalitza v'hamiyuna miyunin b'shlosha, and okay, so let's go. Let me back up and give the answer outside, and then I think it'll be a little easier inside. That we're going to say that actually Rabbi Yehuda changed his mind, and so when it comes to 5 or 3 judges with respect to chalitza, everybody is going to, in the end, say 3 judges is sufficient. But when it comes to miyun, we do have a long-lasting and a permanent machlokas. The opinions who say that 2 judges are sufficient do not change their mind. And so as a result, that's the difference. When it comes to chalitza, in the end, everybody agrees that 3 is what's required. But when it comes to miyun, there is a machlokas. Some say 3, some say 2. And so unlike chalitza, where everybody ends up saying that the halacha is you need 3, the actual result in miyun can be different because it's a permanent machlokas. So let's now see it inside. That Ditanan, we learned the following Mishnah: Smicha sakena ve'egla rufa b'shlosha. When it comes to smicha on the bull that is going to be brought for when a community makes a mistake and sins, or for the measurement associated with the egla rufa to figure out which city is closest to a deceased body, a murdered body that is found, that needs to be done by 3 judges. Divri Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda Omer b'chamisha, and Rabbi Yehuda says no, you need 5 judges. But when it comes to hachalitza v'hamunin b'shlosha, the low kapalig Rabbi Yehuda. But then the Mishnah says that chalitza and miyun are done before 3 judges, and Rabbi Yehuda doesn't disagree. So shmamina, hadar bei Rabbi Yehuda shmamina. So in fact, we see that Rabbi Yehuda reversed himself. So yes, we have a brisa that says Rabbi Yehuda says that you need 5 judges. But the bottom line is he reversed himself and ended up saying that you only need 3 judges. So as a result, when it comes to chalitza, we say that 3 judges is sufficient, because in the end, there really is no disagreement about requiring 3 judges. However, when it comes to miyun, there is a real disagreement with respect to that. And so as a result, miyun and chalitza don't necessarily have the same halacha. So Amarava, now that we've said all that, we're going to do some interesting rules regarding chalitza. That the judges need to say that they have a specific place for the chalitza to go to beforehand, because it says in the Torah, the also yivimto hashara el hazakanim. The Yevamot needs to be able to go to the gate to the judges, so that she needs a place that she can know that she can go to in order to perform yibum. Rav Papa, in order to force the Yavam to perform chalitza. Rav Papa the Rav Huna braid the Rabbi Yoshua avdei uvda b'chamisha. Now, even though we said that the halacha was you only need 3 judges, Rav Papa and Rav Huna, they both ruled in cases where there were 5 judges. Kiman. So what do you mean? Is that like to Rabbi Yehuda? You're doing like Rabbi Yehuda. He retracted himself. So why did they require 5 judges? Levarsumay milsa. That it wasn't about the number of judges that was required, but it was about having extra people there to publicize what was happening. They weren't serving really as judges. They were just there to publicize. And now we'll have some additional stories about that publicizing effort. Rav Ashi Ikle Lebe Rav Kahana. Rav Ashi had come to visit Rav Kahana. Amrlai Salik Mar Legaba and Lemaluye Be Chamisha. The master has come up to us, so let's complete a quorum of 5. Let's do 5 for judges for the chalitza. So Amar Rav Kahana Haba Kamina Kamei de Rav Yehuda. I was once standing in front of Rav Yehuda, but Amarli Ta Sakla Zurza Dekane, come and bring some reeds to sit on. That's why you would bring the reeds. It's Tarufe Be Chamisha, so that you come and create essentially a group of 5. So Amrulo, Lama Li Chamisha, why do I need 5? Amrulahu, Kiheka Parse Milsa, in order to publicize it. Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, Habakai Kamei de Rav Yehuda, and Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda was standing in front of Rav Yehuda. Amrlai, and Rav Yehuda said to him, Sak Tala Zirza, to kind of go get some reeds so that you can, a bundle of reeds so that you have a place to sit. Litz to Rufe Bay Chamisha, so that you can join our and create a group of 5, Lifarsumi Milsa, in order to publicize it. Well, Amrlai Tanina, 1 second, Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda said back, listen, I have a brisa that teaches Be Yisrael, means bevased in Yisrael. I can only participate if it's a court of Jews. Below bevased in Shalgerim, it can't be a court of converts. But I'm actually a convert, and so as a result, I'm not qualified to take part in the chalitza ceremony. So Amar Rav Yehuda, Kigon Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda. Rav Yehuda then on that honesty associated with Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda, I think, is saying Mapikna Mamona Apume, that he's so reliable that I would collect money based on his mouth, based on what he testifies. So that's how trustworthy he is. He's essentially worth like 2 witnesses. Well, 1 second, the Gemara asks, can that really be? Could you really collect money on that? The Torah says you need to have 2 witnesses. Ella marana shtara apume. So you're absolutely right. The Gemara points out that Rav Yehuda would never, of course, actually collect money based on the wording, based on the word of Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda alone. But what he would do is that if Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda would say that a contract had been paid back, and then that would downgrade the level of the document. Ordinarily, if I've got a document that you sign that says that you're going to pay me a certain amount of money, like effectively what a check is, I can use that check to collect from you, because that check indicates that you've promised me a certain amount of money. But if in fact that there's testimony that says that check has been paid and really it's no longer a valid check, well, then you're not allowed to use that alone to collect. You'll need to bring witnesses. So what we're saying is, what Rav Yehuda said is that if Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda would testify that he saw that John Doe had paid back a debt that was on a contract, so then that contract would no longer be usable to collect without witnesses. And so as a result, that's the sense in which Rav Yehuda was saying that he would trust the testimony of Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda. And so tomorrow we're going to now continue with this discussion of service as a judge because he was a convert. So again, we referenced the inability of Rav Shmuel Bar Yehuda to serve as a judge because he was a convert. Tomorrow, we're going to elaborate on the eligibility of a convert to act as a judge. And so we'll, God willing, see that tomorrow.
Thank you, Rabbi. You have a good day.
Thank you. You too. Have a wonderful day.